Youorns. Greetings, fellow Watford fans. Omar here, and it's time for another edition of the YouOrns 10-minute take on Watford nil, Preston North End nil. Watford trying to build upon how they've gone so far under Tom Cleverley. And look, you've got to look at these 4 games. The rave reviews are in for Tom Cleverley because he's brought an air of stability to this men's first team, and they're playing better football. At least they look more confident in what they're doing on the pitch. But there are still some issues that remain. And after watching this game, which will not go down in the annals of Watford history as one of those that you will remember in the next 5 minutes, there are still a few things that Watford need to tidy up. One of them is the biggest problem in this game for the Hornets, and that was their end product. That ball in the final third, that final ball, that pass that just did not come off for the Hornets throughout this match, despite the fact that Watford dominated possession, despite the fact that Watford looked very comfortable in their possession, despite the fact that Watford held onto the ball and were very composed, and the defense was also, I thought, quite good in this contest. It's that final ball that cost the Hornets today. Not that they lost the game, they lost an opportunity to win the game. Watford had a number of chances. They had 7 shots on goal, 2 of them on target. Preston actually had 9 shots on goal, 1 of those on target. But Watford could not allow for their possession to translate into something that ended up being a goal. And as a result, it was a 0-0 draw. Now, the good news about that is obviously the clean sheet and 1 point. The bad news about that is that Watford, I think, were the busier team despite the statistics and the more comfortable team despite the statistics, and could not get that final ball in. Several times in this contest, Watford had an opportunity to do that, and the ball was either overhit or underhit. The ball was either to the wrong player or to a Preston player. And that really was the reason why this game ended at 0-0. In fact, Preston North End and Watford, whenever they played, at least 3 of the last 4 times they've played, the result has ended it as a 0-0 draw. Of course, Watford beat Preston 5-1 last year in the earlier portion of this season when they went to Deepdale a few months ago. And then the previous 2 contests, both of them last season, they were 0-0 draws. So Watford knew what Preston were going to bring into this game. Preston are big. Preston defend in a block. Preston usually have 5 at the back, and their goal is to defend and to stifle and to frustrate and try to go on a smash and grab. That's what Preston's whole MO is, and they're still chasing for a playoff spot. So Watford knew that they could play spoiler if they would have won this game, but they didn't win the game and they didn't lose it. But you just look at the game and you think of the chances that Watford had. And although Watford didn't have a million chances in the game, Watford did have opportunities in this game. And they really should have put them away. They didn't because of the things I said. And when you're dealing with a Preston side that's big, a Preston side that loves to defend with 5 or 6 in the box, your final ball has to be absolutely on. And your final pass has to be absolutely on. Your final third play has to be impeccable against a side that comes in doggedly defensively and a team that looks like they are not going to give up a scrape in their brick wall defense-wise. And that's what Preston were all about. That's what they've always been about, at least under this particular manager, Ryan Lowe. But Watford did not get these things right. And when your final ball isn't correct, that means that your set pieces have to be more important than ever. And Watford's set pieces in this game just weren't good enough. The corner kicks weren't very good. And the free kicks, the 1 or 2 free kicks that they had, I think it was 1, Rajovic, was not good enough with the free kick. And so the margins are fine in games like this, and they absolutely require more care in that final third. That's still something that Watford need to work on. Now, in the first 3 games under Clevs, I thought that the passing was a lot better, a lot crisper, a lot sharper, a lot quicker. But in this particular game, some of the bad habits crept in again. As I said, that final ball was not in. It just did not come off correctly enough at all in any of Watford's play. And it's a shame because I think Watford could have won this game had they got that right. I thought that Watford could trouble Freddie Woodman, the goalkeeper for Preston, a lot more than they did. Had that final ball come off for them, I think they would have scored, and I definitely believe that they would have troubled the goalkeeper a lot more. I think there was a massive moment in the second half of this game where Watford had goal opportunities. And when Georgie came on in that second half, he allowed a ball to go across him with the goal in front of him. And instead of taking on the shot himself, he left it to Jamal Lewis, and Jamal Lewis smashed the ball over the bar into the rookery. And I thought that that was an opportunity lost for Watford. So what happened today, in addition to all the things I've talked about, is that we hesitated in the 18-yard box, took the extra touch, took an extra couple of dribbles, made an extra pass that we didn't need to make. Those are the kinds of things that we have to cut out, and we have to be much more incisive in our final third and much more incisive with our shot making and decision making. Now, these problems pre-existed Tom Cleverley. In fact, they pre-existed Val Ishmael. And again, one of the things that's going to happen in the offseason for Watford is really a wholesale reworking of those things, set piece wise, final ball wise, whether it's with this set of players or different personnel that come in with some of these players most likely leaving. There just needs to be a much more clear and concerted effort to emphasize, if it hasn't already been done, that final ball in the final third. That final third play has to be so important. Watford this season largely have not got the balance right. And that's the reason why they've not won as many games as they perhaps could or should, especially at the Vic, where they've only won 5 times at the Vic in terms of the championship. Watford's balance across all phases of play has not been achieved in this entire season, maybe except for maybe 1 or 2 games at the Vic. And those are the first 2 that were played against QPR and Plymouth. But we don't have the balance right in each third of the pitch. We might have sometimes 2/3 right or 1/3 right, but rarely do we have all thirds right. Sometimes we have nothing right in terms of our phases of play, our thirds of play on the pitch, whether it's defense, midfield, or attack. Now, in attack today, we had Emmanuel Dennis, and I didn't think he had a particularly good game. And again, it could be because he's still not where he should be fitness wise. It could be because he's carrying the groin injury. It could be a whole host of things. But he was not on his game today, despite scoring, I think, in 2 or 3 of the last 4 or 5 games. Now, he certainly scored in 2 of the last 3 games. He scored against Leeds. He scored 2 of the last 4. Scored against Leeds and scored against Birmingham before that, but has not scored in, to the best of my memory, these previous 2 games that Watford have played. Obviously, didn't score in this match against Preston, but he did not play particularly well up front. It was a 3-5-2 for Cleverley, and it was the partnership of Dennis and Bio. Bio was very busy on the day, ran his socks off as he always does, but really didn't get involved in critical areas of the game. He did hold up the ball well, did link up play well, but he didn't really have a sniff at goal in this one. So it was a pretty quiet game for him too, even though Bio is always involved in the action in that way. He finds other ways to involve himself, even if he doesn't get on the score sheet. And then you have Espria at the time, who started this game. I thought he was very good, very alert, very bright, and I thought that he was the spark in this team that gave Watford the energy and the passion and the pace that they had at various points of a very dull game, as I said. But Espria, despite putting his foot forward and doing pretty well, could not galvanize the rest of this team, and so he was kind of isolated in his endeavors. Georgie came on, as I said, had a little bright spark as soon as he came on, actually made an impact, got a corner, but really after that, he largely faded from the game. And I think the other notable player in this particular game was TDB, who again has a stellar track record under Clevs and even before Clevs. TDB has really worked hard, and he's enjoying his best season at Watford, even with the injuries that he has had this season and in prior seasons. This is the first season where I think TDB has broken out and shown you exactly the kind of football he's capable of, the skill set that he has, the technical abilities he has, the discipline that he has, and his sensible passing. He is very good with the ball. He can pass the ball out of midfield, he can pass it out of defense, and he can certainly go forward with the ball when the situation warrants it. So TDB, another special hand for him because he's played very, very well these last 3 or 4 games. And again, this game against Preston was no exception. But the whole team did not raise their game when it needed to be raised, even though, as I've said, Watford were very good in possession for the most part. They were able to look comfortable in possession, which you've not seen a lot at Vicarage Road. The Leeds game was the other game at the Vic where Watford looked very comfortable and composed in possession, looked in control of what they were doing, had confidence and energy and good attitude and good positivity with the possession. It's one thing to have possession and just have it. But when you have possession and you have a sense of what you're going to do with the ball, you have a sense of confidence about your possession, you have a sense of energy and urgency about your possession, it's an encouraging thing. Even if that final ball fails, even if that final pass fails, it's about building blocks. It's about cementing something. It's about beginning to build confidence in what you do on the ball when you're on the front foot, when you're in attack. It's about building the confidence to do this, not just solo, but do this as teammates together on the pitch. And I think that since Cleverley's come in, Watford have begun in this men's first team to develop that confidence in possession and have a self-assurance about them when they go forward. And that's a good sign. And that was an encouraging sign in this game. But beyond that, Watford in their final ball just did not pull it off. And that's a shame. They've got Ipswich Town next in what will be the first of the last 5 games that they play this season. They will travel to Portman Road this coming Wednesday, April the 10th, to take on Ipswich. The Tractor Boys are in second place in the table. And look, Watford are going to be playing teams that are either getting promoted, will get promoted, or are in the playoffs all the rest of the way. So, except for maybe one, which is Stoke City, they'll play Stoke one more time. Actually, they won't play Stoke again. They've finished with Stoke this season. My mistake. But the bottom line is that Watford are going to be playing teams who are hunting for playoff spots or are in the playoffs or who are in the automatic promotion places. They will play against the likes of Ipswich, which I've just mentioned. They will play Hull City again. They will certainly be doing that. They'll play Middlesbrough, who aren't really in the playoff picture at this point. And they will also play Sunderland, who also aren't in the playoff picture, but have been playing decent football in some instances. And those are really the rest of the games that they play. And I may have missed another team in all of that. But that is the story for Watford these last few games. And what is refreshing, one other positive I'll take away from this game, despite the result and despite the fact that it was a forgettable watch, one thing you take away from this game, and it is worthwhile noting this, is that this team is not on the beach. Now, how many times have we seen, fellow Watford supporters, in any given season at this time of year, that the team absolutely is on the beach? And you see that they're not doing the usual running, they're not putting in a tackle, they're not putting in a shift overall. But you're not seeing that under Tom Cleverley in this particular season, where we saw it last season under Chris Wilder, we saw it the previous season under the head coach at that time, and so on and so forth. And so this is a refreshing departure. And at least the good thing about these players not being on the beach, obviously, is that they are engaged in their football. They're actually playing for pride and playing to stay here, some of them or most of them. And also, it gives the fans, you and I, as supporters, something to engage with meaningfully and focus on and give us some kind of promise and positive feeling for next season. Now, all of this is to say the following, and I've said this before. I've said this on the YouOrns podcast, which you can find on Apple and Spotify and on Google. I've said this in the YouOrns post-match on X at YouOrnsWFC. And I've also said this on the YouOrns Instagram extra, YouOrns Live on Instagram, right? And that's at YouOrnsWFC on Instagram. This team is in a good place. And more than that, I see some encouraging improvements despite what has been a dismal season overall, especially at the Vic. But what I really want to say is that the Watford front office, and I've said this on all the platforms that I've just mentioned, the Watford front office must make Tom Cleverley the head coach for next season. And I would do that without further delay. It's a small sample size, 4 games, four, but those are 4 games where Watford have been unbeaten. And what I would like to see this front office do pretty quickly. Now, they may end up doing it at the end of the season to give Watford fans that lift, that little extra boost, a little extra hope for what could come next season. They might wait till the end of the season to name Tom Cleverley the head coach. Now, if Tom Cleverley continues to bring the results he's bringing, whether it's draws, as frustrating as some of those draws were, just go back a few days to Easter Monday against West Brom when we had a 2-0 lead and threw it away, or whether it's wins, if Tom Cleverley continues to build the resume that he's building as the interim head coach of this Watford men's first team, he has to get the job. And I think he will get the job. The players clearly are playing for him. The players like him. The players love him. The players respect him. I've said this before as well. And don't forget, just last season, he played on the pitch with most of these players. So they're going to listen to him. It's as if they're listening to a second captain on the team. There's an interview that Watford FC have done with TDB. And TDB, Tom Dele-Bashiru, said that he hopes that Tom Cleverley is made the manager and that the interim tag is taken off. He hopes that Tom Cleverley is made the manager. Now, if you've got players speaking publicly about this, that's a good sign. And it's also obviously a direct appeal to the owner, to the front office, to the brass at Watford, that instead of looking elsewhere for some new shiny object, look no further than the club man himself, Clevs, Tom Cleverley, the club man. He is totally a club man at Watford. He loves the club. He loves the community. It's a no-brainer to make Tom Cleverley the permanent head coach, the next head coach of Watford. Take the interim tag off. I've said this before on the podcast and elsewhere. Take the interim tag off. It's a no-brainer. The man knows the club better than anyone that you're going to search for as the new shiny object in the room for manager for next season. And that's the advantage that Tom Cleverley has. It's an added advantage for him. And it's a plus for the club. It's a plus for the fans who love Clevs. And it's a plus for the players. It's a win-win, in other words, for everyone. There's no need to go searching for this shiny new object when you've got a jewel in the crown right here in Tom Cleverley. Makes sense, doesn't it? This has been the YouOrns 10-minute take.